Greetings. This is video 13 of the poem Savitri by Sri Aurobindo, and what I'm about to read is Canto 3 of Book 3, The House of the Spirit and the New Creation. A mightier task remained than all he had done. To that he turned from which all being comes, a sign attending from the secrecy, which knows the truth ungrasped behind our thoughts, and guards the world with its all-seeing gaze. In the unapproachable stillness of his soul, intense, one-pointed, monumental, lone, patient he sat like an incarnate hope, motionless on a pedestal of prayer. A strength he sought that was not yet on earth, help from a power too great for mortal will, the light of a truth now only seen afar, a sanction from his high omnipotent source. But from the appalling heights there stooped no voice. The timeless lids were closed, no opening came. A neutral, helpless void oppressed the years. In the texture of our bound humanity, he felt the stark resistance, huge and dumb, of our inconscient and unseeing base, the stubborn mute rejection in life's depths, the ignorant no in the origin of things. A veiled collaboration with the night, even in himself survived and hid from his view. Still something in his earthly being kept its kinship with the inconscient whence it came. A shadowy unity with a vanished past, treasured in an old world frame, was lurking there, secret, unnoted by the illumined mind, and in subconscious whispers and in dream, still murmured at the mind's and spirit's choice. Its treacherous elements spread like slippery grains, hoping the incoming truth might stumble and fall. And old ideal voices wandering moaned and pleaded for a heavenly leniency to the gracious imperfections of our earth and the sweet weakness of our mortal state. This now he willed to discover and exile, the element in him betraying God. All nature's recondite spaces were stripped bare, all her dim crypts and corners searched with fire, where refugee instincts and unshaped revolts could shelter find in darkness's sanctuary, against the white purity of heaven's cleansing flame. All seemed to have perished that was undivine, yet some minutest dissident might escape, and still a center lurk of the blind force. For the inconscient too is infinite. The more its abysses we insist to sound, the more it stretches endlessly. Then, lest a human cry should spoil the truth, he tore desire up from its bleeding roots, and offered to the gods the vacant place. Thus could he bear the touch immaculate. A last and mightiest transformation came. His soul was all in front like a giant sea, flooding the mind and body with its waves. His being, spread to embrace the universe, united the within and the without, to make of life a cosmic harmony. An empire of the immanent divine. In this tremendous universality, not only his soul nature and mind sense included every soul and mind in his, but even the life of flesh and nerve was changed, and grew one flesh and nerve with all that lives. He felt the joy of others as his joy. He bore the grief of others as his grief. His universal sympathy upbore, immense like ocean, the creation's load, as earth upbears all being sacrifice, thrilled with a hidden transcendence, joy, and peace. There was no more division's endless scroll. One grew the Spirit's secret unity. All nature felt again the single bliss. There was no cleavage between soul and soul. There was no barrier between the world and God. Overpowered were form and memory's limiting line. The covering mind was seized and torn apart. It was dissolved and now no more could be. The one consciousness that made the world was seen. All now was luminosity and force. Abolished in its last thin, fainting trace, the circle of the little self was gone. The separate being could no more be felt. It disappeared and knew itself no more, lost in the Spirit's wide identity. His nature grew a movement of the all, exploring itself to find that all was he. His soul was a delegation of the all, that turned from itself to join the one supreme. Transcended was the human formula. Man's heart that had obscured the inviolable assumed the mighty beating of a god's. His seeking mind ceased in the truth that knows. His life was a flow of the universal life. He stood fulfilled on the world's highest line, awaiting the ascent beyond the world, awaiting the descent the world to save. A splendor and a symbol wrapped the earth. Serene epiphanies looked and hallowed vasts. Surrounded, wise infinitudes were close, and bright remotenesses leaned near and kin. Sense failed in that tremendous lucency. Ephemeral voices from his hearing fell, and thought potent no more sank large and pale, like a tired god into mysterious seas. The robes of mortal thinking were cast down, leaving his knowledge bare to absolute sight. Fate's driving ceased and nature's sleepless spur. The athlete heavings of the will were stilled in the omnipotent's unmoving peace. Life in his members lay down vast and mute. Naked, unwalled, unterrified, it bore the immense regard of immortality. The last movement died, and all at once grew still. A weight that was the unseen transcendent's hand laid on his limbs the Spirit's measureless seal. Infinity swallowed him into shoreless trance. As one who sets his sail towards mysteried shores, driven through huge oceans by the breath of God, the fathomless below, the unknown around, his soul abandoned the blind starfield, space. Afar from all that makes the measured world, plunging to hidden eternities it withdrew, back from mind's foaming surface to the vasts, voiceless within us in omniscient sleep. Above the imperfect reach of word and thought, beyond the sight that seeks support of form, lost in deep tracts of superconscient light, or voyaging in blank featureless nothingness, soul in the trackless incommensurable, or past not self and selflessness, transgressing the dream shores of conscious mind, he reached at last his sempiternal base. On sorrowless heights no winging cry disturbs. Pure and untouched above this mortal play is spread the Spirit's hushed, immobile air. There no beginning is and no end. There is the stable force of all that moves. There the aeonic laborer is at rest. There turns no keyed creation in the void, no giant mechanism watched by a soul. There creaks no fate-turned huge machinery, the marriage of evil with good within one breast, the clash of strife in every clasp of love, the dangerous pain of life's experiment, in the values of inconsequence and chance, the peril of mind's gamble, throwing our lives as stake in a wager of indifferent gods, and the shifting lights and shadows of the idea falling upon the surface consciousness, and in the dream of a mute witness soul, creating the error of a half-seen world, where knowledge is a seeking ignorance, life steps a stumbling series without suit, its aspects of fortuitous design, its equal measure of the true and false. In that immobile and immutable realm, find no access, no cause, no right to live. There only reigns the Spirit's motionless power, poised in itself through still eternity, and its omniscient and omnipotent peace. Thought clashes not with thought, and truth with truth. There is no war of right with rival right. There are no stumbling and half-seeing lives, passing from chance to unexpected chance. No suffering of hearts compelled to beat in bodies of the inert inconscience make. Armed with the immune, occult, unsinking fire, the guardians of eternity keep its law, forever fixed upon truth's giant base, in her magnificent and termless home. There, nature on her dumb spiritual couch, immutably transcendent, knows her source. And to the stir of multitudinous worlds, a sense unmoved in a perpetual calm. All causing, all sustaining and aloof, the witness looks from his unshaken poise, an eye immense regarding all things done. Apart, at peace above creation's stir, immersed in the eternal altitudes, he abode defended in his shoreless self, companioned only by the all-seeing One. A mind too mighty to be bound by thought, a life too boundless for the play in space, a soul without borders, unconvinced of time. He felt the extinction of the world's long pain. He became the unborn self that never dies. He joined the sessions of infinity. On the cosmic murmur, primal loneliness fell. Annulled was the contact formed with time-born things. Empty grew nature's wide community. All things were brought back to their formless seed. The world was silent for a cyclic hour. Although the afflicted nature he had left maintained beneath him her broad numberless fields, her enormous act receding, failed remote, as if a soulless dream at last had ceased. No voice came down from the high silences. None answered from her desolate solitudes. A stillness of cessation reigned, the wide immortal hush before the gods are born. A universal force awaited, mute, the veiled transcendence' ultimate decree. Then suddenly there came a downward look, as if a sea exploring its own depths. A living oneness widened at its core, and joined him to unnumbered multitudes. A bliss, a light, a power, a flame-white love. Caught all into a soul immense embrace. Existence found its truth on oneness's breast, and each became the self and space of all. The great world rhythms were heartbeats of one soul. To feel was a flame discovery of God. All mind was a single harp of many strings. All life a song of many meeting lives. For worlds were many, but the self was one. This knowledge now was made a cosmos' seed. This seed was cased in the safety of the light. It needed not a sheath of ignorance. Then from the trance of that tremendous clasp, and from the throbbings of that single heart, and from the naked spirit's victory, a new and marvelous creation rose. Incalculable outflowing infinitudes, laughing out an unmeasured happiness, lived their innumerable unity. Worlds where the being is unbound and wide. Bodied unthinkably the egoless self. Rapture of beatific energies join time to the timeless, poles of a single joy. White vasts were seen where all is wrapped in all. There were no contraries, no sundered parts. All by spiritual links were joined to all, and bound indissolubly to the one. Each was unique, but took all lives as his own, and, following out these tones of the infinite, recognized in himself the universe. A splendid center of infinity's whirl, pushed to its zenith's heights, its last expanse, felt the divinity of its own self-bliss, repeated in its numberless other selves. It took up tirelessly into its scope persons and figures of the impersonal, as if prolonging in a ceaseless count, in a rapturous multiplication sum, the recurring decimals of eternity. None was apart, none lived for himself alone. Each lived for God in him and God in all. Each soulness inexpressibly held the whole. There, oneness was not tied to monotone. It showed 1,000 aspects of itself. Its calm, immutable stability upbore on a changeless ground forever safe, compelled to a spontaneous servitude, the ever-changing incalculable steps, the seeming reckless dance's subtle plan, of immense world forces in their perfect play. Appearance looked back to its hidden truth, and made of difference oneness's smiling play. It made all persons fractions of the unique, yet all were being secret integers. All struggle was turned to a sweet strife of love, in the harmonized circle of a sure embrace. Identity's reconciling happiness gave a rich security to difference. On a meeting line of hazardous extremes, the game of games was played to its breaking point, where through self-finding by divine self-loss, there leaps out unity's supreme delight, whose blissful undivided sweetness feels a communality of the absolute. There was no sob of suffering anywhere. Experience ran from point to point of joy. Bliss was the pure undying truth of things. All nature was a conscious front of God. A wisdom worked in all, self-moved, self-sure, a plenitude of illimitable light, an authenticity of intuitive truth, a glory and passion of creative force. Infallible, leaping from eternity, the moment's thought inspired the passing act. A word, a laughter sprang from silence's breast, a rhythm of beauty in the calm of space, a knowledge in the fathomless heart of time. All turned to awe without reserve's recoil. A single ecstasy without a break. Love was a close and thrilled identity in the throbbing heart of all that luminous life. A universal vision that unites, a sympathy of nerve replying to nerve, hearing that listens to thought's inner sound and follows the rhythmic meaning of the heart, a touch that needs not hands to feel, to clasp. Were there the native means of consciousness and heighten the intimacy of soul with soul. A grand orchestra of spiritual powers, a diapason of soul interchange, harmonized a oneness deep, immeasurable. In these new worlds projected, he became a portion of the universal gaze, a station of the all-inhabiting light, a ripple on a single sea of peace. His mind answered to countless communing minds. His words were syllables of the cosmos' speech. His life a field of the vast cosmic stir. He felt the footsteps of a million wills, moving in unison to a single goal. A stream ever newborn that never dies, caught in its thousandfold current's ravishing flow, with eddies of immortal sweetness thrilled. He bore, coiling through his members as they passed, calm movements of interminable delight, the bliss of a myriad myriads who are one. In this vast outbreak of perfection's law, imposing its fixity on the flux of things, he saw a hierarchy of lucent planes and feft to this highest kingdom of God state. Attuning to one truth their own right rule, each housed the gladness of a bright degree, alone in beauty, perfect in self-kind, an image cast by one deep truth's absolute, married to all in happy difference. Each gave its powers to help its neighbor's parts, but suffered no diminution by the gift. Profiteers of a mystic interchange, they grew by what they took and what they gave. All others they felt as their own complements, one in the might and joy of multitude. Even in the poise where oneness draws apart to feel the rapture of its separate selves, the soul in its solitude yearned towards the all, and the many turned to look back at the one. And all-revealing, all-creating bliss, seeking for forms to manifest truths divine, aligned in their significant mystery, the gleams of the symbols of the ineffable, blazoned like hues upon a colorless air, on the white purity of the witness soul. These hues were the very prism of the Supreme, his beauty, power, delight, creation's cause. A vast truth consciousness took up these signs to pass them on to some divine child heart that looked on them with laughter and delight, enjoyed in these transcendent images, living and real as the truths they house. The Spirit's white neutrality became a playground of miracles, a rendezvous for the secret powers of a mystic timelessness. It made of space a marvel house of God. It poured through time its works of ageless might, unveiled, seen as alluring rapturous face, the wonder and beauty of its love and force. The eternal goddess moved in her cosmic house, sporting with God as a mother with her child. To him the universe was her bosom of love. His toys were the immortal verities. All here self-lost had there its divine place. The powers that here betray our hearts and air were there sovereign in truth, perfect in joy, masters in a creation without flaw, possessors of their own infinitude. Their mind, a splendid sun of vision's rays, shaped substance by the glory of its thoughts, and moved amidst the grandeur of its dreams. Imagination's great ensorceling rod summoned the unknown and gave to it a home, outspread luxuriantly in golden air, truth's iris-colored wings of fantasy, or sang to the intuitive heart of joy, wonder's dream notes that bring the real close. It's power that makes the unknowable near and true. In the temple of the ideal shrined the One. It peopled thought and mind and happy sense, filled with bright aspects of the might of God and living persons of the One Supreme. The speech that voices the ineffable, the ray revealing unseen presences, the virgin forms through which the formless shines, the word that ushers divine experience, and the ideas that crowd the infinite. There was no gulf between the thought and fact. Ever they replied like bird to calling bird. The will obeyed the thought, the act the will. There was a harmony woven twixt soul and soul, a marriage with eternity divinized time. Their life pursued, unwearied of her sport, joy in her heart and laughter on her lips. The bright adventure of God's game of chance. In her ingenious ardor of caprice, in her transfiguring mirth, she mapped on time a fascinating puzzle of events. Lured at each turn by new vicissitudes, to self-discovery that could never cease. Ever she framed stark bonds for the will to break, brought new creations for the thought's surprise, and passionate ventures for the heart to dare, where truth recurred with an unexpected face, or else repeated old familiar joy, like the return of a delightful rhyme. At hide and seek on Mother Wisdom's breast, an artist teeming with her world idea, she never could exhaust its numberless thoughts, and vast adventure into thinking shapes, and trial and lure of a new living's dreams. Untired of sameness and untired of change, endlessly she unrolled her moving act. A mystery drama of divine delight, a living poem of world ecstasy, a kakemono of significant forms, a coiled perspective of developing scenes, a brilliant chase of self-revealing shapes, an ardent hunt of soul looking for soul, a seeking and finding as of gods. There, matter is the spirit's firm density, an artistry of glad outwardness of self, a treasure house of lasting images, where sense can build a world of pure delight. The home of a perpetual happiness, it lodged the hours as in a pleasant inn. The senses there were outlets of the soul. Even the youngest child thought of the mind incarnated some touch of highest things. There, substance was a resonant harp of self, a net for the constant lightnings of the spirit, a magnet power of love's intensity, whose yearning throb and adoration's cry drew God's approaches close, sweet, wonderful. Its solidity was a mass of heavenly make. Its fixity and sweet permanence of charm made a bright pedestal for felicity. Its bodies woven by a divine sense prolonged the nearness of soul's clasp with soul. Its warm play of external sight and touch reflected the glow and thrill of the heart's joy. Mind's climbing brilliant thoughts, the spirit's bliss. Life's rapture kept forever its flame and cry. All that now passes lived immortal there, in the proud beauty and fine harmony of matter plastic to spiritual light. Its ordered hours proclaimed the eternal law. Vision reposed on a safety of deathless forms. Time was eternity's transparent robe. An architect hewing out self's living rock, phenomenon built reality's summer house on the beaches of the sea of infinity. Against this glory of spiritual states, their parallels and yet their opposites floated and swayed, eclipsed and shadow-like, as if a doubt made substance, flickering, pale. This other scheme two vast negations found. A world that knows not its inhabiting self, labors to find its cause and need to be. A spirit ignorant of the world it made, obscured by matter, travestied by life, struggles to emerge, to be free, to know and reign. These were close tied in one disharmony, yet the divergent lines met not at all. Three powers governed its irrational course. In the beginning, an unknowing force. In the middle, an embodied, striving soul. In the end, a silent spirit denying life. A dull and infelicitous interlude unrolls its dubious truth to a questioning mind, compelled by the ignorant power to play its part and to record her inconclusive tale, the mystery of her inconscient plan, and the riddle of a being born from night by a marriage of necessity with chance. This darkness hides our nobler destiny, a chrysalis of a great and glorious truth. It stifles the winged marvel in its sheath, lest from the prison of matter it escapes, and, wasting its beauty on the formless vast, merged into the unknowable's mystery, leave unfulfilled the world's miraculous fate. As yet, thought only some high spirit's dream, or a vexed illusion in man's toiling mind, a new creation from the old shall rise, a knowledge inarticulate find speech, beauty suppressed burst into paradise bloom, pleasure and pain dive into absolute bliss. A tongueless oracle shall speak at last, the superconscient conscious grow on earth, the eternal's wonders join the dance of time. But now all seemed a vainly teeming vast, upheld by a deluded energy, to a spectator self-absorbed and mute, careless of the unmeaning show he watched, regarding the bizarre procession pass, like one who waits for an unexpected end. He saw a world that is from a world to be. There he divined rather than saw or felt, far off upon the rim of consciousness, transient and frail this little whirling globe, and on it left like a lost dream's vain mold, a fragile copy of the spirit's shell, his body gathered into mystic sleep. A foreign shape it seemed, a mystic shade. Alien now seemed that dim far universe. Self and eternity alone were true. Then memory climbed to him from the striving plains, bringing a cry from once loved, cherished things. And to the cry, as to its own lost call, a ray replied from the occult supreme. For even there the boundless oneness dwells. To its own sight unrecognizable, it lives still sunk in its own tenebrous seas, upholding the world's inconscient unity, hidden in matter's insentient multitude. This seed self sown in the indeterminate forfeits its glory of divinity, concealing the omnipotence of its force, concealing the omniscience of its soul, an agent of its own transcendent will. It merges knowledge in the inconscient deep, accepting error, sorrow, death, and pain. It pays the ransom of the ignorant night, redeeming by its substance nature's fall. Himself he knew, and why his soul had gone into earth's passionate obscurity, to share the labor of an errant power, which by division hopes to find the one. Two beings he was, one wide and free above, one struggling, bound, intense, its portion here. A tie between them still could bridge two worlds. There was a dim response, a distant breath. All had not ceased in the unbounded hush. His heart lay somewhere, conscious and alone, far down below him like a lamp in night. Abandoned it lay, alone, imperishable, immobile with excess of passionate will, his living, sacrificed, and offered heart, absorbed in adoration mystical, turned to its far-off fount of light and love. In the luminous stillness of its mute appeal, it looked up to the heights it could not see. It yearned from the longing depths it could not leave. In the center of his vast and fateful trance, halfway between his free and fallen selves, interceding twixt God's day and the mortal's night, accepting worship as its single law, accepting bliss as the sole cause of things, refusing the austere joy which none can share, refusing the calm that lives for calm alone. To her it turned for whom it willed to be. In the passion of its solitary dream, it lay like a closed, soundless oratory, where sleeps a consecrated argent floor, lit by a single and untrembling ray, and an invisible presence kneels in prayer. On some deep breast of liberating quiet, all else was satisfied with quietude. This only knew there was a truth beyond. All other parts were dumb in centered sleep, consenting to the slow deliberate power which tolerates the world's error and its grief, consenting to the cosmic long delay, timelessly waiting through the patient years, her coming they had asked for earth and men. This was the fiery point that called her now. Extinction could not quench that lonely fire. Its seeing filled the blank of mind and will. Thought dead, its changeless force abode and grew. Armed with the intuition of a bliss to which some moved tranquility was the key, it persevered through life's huge emptiness, amid the blank denials of the world. It sent its voiceless prayer to the unknown. It listened for the footsteps of its hopes, returning through the void immensities. It waited for the fiat of the word that comes through the still self from the Supreme. That's the end of Canto 3 of Book 3 of the poem Savitri by Sri Aurobindo. Canto 4, The Vision and the Boon. Then suddenly there rose a sacred stir. Amid the lifeless silence of the void, in a solitude and an immensity, a sound came quivering like a loved footfall, heard in the listening spaces of the soul. A touch perturbed his fibers with delight. An influence had approached the mortal range. A boundless heart was near his longing heart. A mystic form enveloped his earthly shape. All at her contact broke from silence's seal. Spirit and body thrilled, identified, linked in the grasp of an unspoken joy. Mind, members, life were merged in ecstasy, intoxicated as with nectarous rain. His nature's passioning stretches flowed to her, flashing with lightnings, mad with luminous wine. All was a limitless sea that heaved to the moon. A divinizing stream possessed his veins. His body's cells awoke to spirit sense. Each nerve became a burning thread of joy. Tissue and flesh partook beatitude. A light, the dun, unplumbed subconscious caves, thrilled with the presence of her longed-for tread, and filled with flickering crests and praying tongues. Even lost in slumber, mute, inanimate, his very body answered to her power. The one he worshipped was within him now. Flame pure, ethereal tressed, a mighty face appeared, and lips moved by immortal words. Lids, wisdom's leaves, drooped over rapture's orbs. A marble monument of ponderings shone. A forehead, sight's crypt, and large like ocean's gaze towards heaven. Two tranquil eyes of boundless thought looked into man's and saw the God to come. A shape was seen on threshold mind, a voice absolute and wise in the heart's chambers spoke. O Son of Strength who climbest creation's peaks, no soul is thy companion in the light. Alone thou standest at the eternal doors. What thou hast won is thine, but ask no more. O Spirit aspiring in an ignorant frame, O voice arisen from the unconscious world, how shalt thou speak for men whose hearts are dumb, make purblind earth the soul's seer vision's home, or lighten the burden of the senseless globe? I am the mystery beyond reach of mind. I am the goal of the travail of the suns. My fire and sweetness are the cause of life. But too immense my danger and my joy. Awake not the immeasurable descent. Speak not my secret name to hostile time. Man is too weak to bear the infinite's weight. Truth born too soon might break the imperfect earth. Leave the all-seeing power to hew its way. In thy single vast achievement reign apart, helping the world with thy great lonely days. I ask thee not to merge thy heart of flame in the immobile's wide, uncaring bliss. Turn from the fruitless motion of the years, deserting the fierce labor of the worlds, aloof from beings, lost in the alone. How shall thy mighty spirit brook repose, while death is still unconquered on earth, and time a field of suffering and pain? Thy soul was born to share the laden force. Obey thy nature and fulfill thy fate. Accept the difficulty and godlike toil. For the slow-paced omniscient purpose live. The enigma's knot is tied in humankind, a lightning from the heights that think and plan, plowing the air of life with vanishing trails. Man, soul awake in an unconscious world, aspires in vain to change the cosmic dream. Arrived from some half-luminous beyond, he is a stranger in the mindless vasts, a traveler in his oft-shining home, amid the tread of many infinities. He has pitched a tent of life in desert space. Heaven's fixed regard beholds him from above, in the house of nature a perturbing guest, a voyage twixt thoughts and constant shores, a hunter of unknown and beautiful powers, a nomad of the far mysterious light, in the wide ways a little spark of God. Against his spirit all is in dire league, a titan influence stops his Godward gaze. Around him hungers the unpitying void. The eternal darkness seeks him with her hands. Inscrutable energies drive him and deceive. Immense implacable deities oppose. An inert soul and a somnambulous force have made a world estranged from life and thought. The dragon of the dark foundations keeps unalterable the law of chance and death. On his long way through time and circumstance, the gray-hued riddling nether shadow sphinx, her dreadful paws upon the swallowing sands, awaits him armed with the soul-slaying word. Across his path sits the dim camp of night. His day is a moment in perpetual time. He is the prey of the minutes and the hours. Assailed on earth and unassured of heaven, descended here unhappy and sublime, a link between the demigod and the beast, he knows not his own greatness nor his aim. He has forgotten why he has come and whence. His spirit and his members are at war. His height breaks off too low to reach the skies. His mass is buried in the animal mire. A strange antinomy is his nature's rule. A riddle of opposites is made his field. Freedom he asks, but needs to live in bonds. He has need of darkness to perceive some light, and need of grief to feel a little bliss. He has need of death to find a greater life. All sides he sees and turns to every call. He has no certain light by which to walk. His life is a blind man's bluff, a hide-and-seek. He seeks himself, and from himself he runs. Meeting himself, he thinks it other than he. Always he builds, but finds no constant ground. Always he journeys, but nowhere arrives. He would guide the world, himself he cannot guide. He would save his soul, his life he cannot save. The light his soul had brought, his mind has lost. All he has learned is soon again in doubt. A sun to him seems the shadow of his thoughts. Then all is shadow again and nothing true. Unknowing what he does or whither he tends, he fabricates signs of the real in ignorance. He has hitched his mortal error to truth's star. Wisdom attracts him with her luminous masks, but never has he seen the face behind. A giant ignorance surrounds his lore. Assigned to meet the cosmic mystery in the dumb figure of a material world, his passport of entry false and his personage, he is compelled to be what he is not. He obeys the inconscience he had come to rule, and sinks in matter to fulfill his soul. Awakened from her lower driven forms, the Earth Mother gave her forces to his hands, and painfully he guards the heavy trust. His mind is a lost torchbearer on her roads. Illumining breath to think and plasm to feel, he labors with his slow and septic brain, helped by the reason's vacillating fires, to make his thought and will a magic door for knowledge to enter the darkness of the world, and love to rule a realm of strife and hate. A mind impotent to reconcile heaven and earth, and tied to matter with 1,000 bonds, he lifts himself to be a conscious God. Even when a glory of wisdom crowns his brow, when mind and spirit shed a grandiose ray to exalt this product of the sperm and gene, this alchemist's miracle from plasm and gas, and he who shared the animal's run and crawl, lifts his thought stature to the immortal's heights. His life still keeps the human middle way. His body he resigns to death and pain, abandoning matter his too heavy charge. A thaumaturge septic of miracles, a spirit left sterile of its occult power, by an unbelieving brain and a credulous heart, he leaves the world to end where it began. His work unfinished, he claims a heavenly prize. Thus he has missed creation's absolute. Halfway he stops his star of destiny, a vast and vain long-tried experiment, an ill-served high conception doubtfully done. The world's life falters on, not seeing its goal, a zigzag towards unknown dangerous ground, ever repeating its habitual walk, ever retreating after marches long, and hardiest victories without sure result, drawn endlessly an inconclusive game. In an ill-fitting and voluminous robe, a radiant purpose still conceals its face. A mighty blindness stumbles hoping on, feeding its strength on gifts of luminous chance. Because the human instrument has failed, the Godhead frustrate sleeps within its seed, a spirit entangled in the forms it made. His failure is not failure whom God leads. Through all, the slow mysterious march goes on. An immutable power has made this mutable world. A self-fulfilling transcendence treads man's road, the driver of the soul upon its path. It knows its steps, its way is inevitable. And how shall the end be vain when God is guide? However man's mind may tire or fail his flesh, a will prevails, canceling his conscious choice. The goal recedes, a bournless vastness calls, retreating into an immense unknown. There is no end to the world's stupendous march. There is no rest for the embodied soul. It must live on, describe all time's huge curve. An influx presses from the close beyond, forbidding him rest and earthly ease, till he has found himself he cannot pause. A light there is that leads, a power that aids. Unmarked, unfelt, it sees in him and acts. Ignorant, he forms the all-conscient in his depths. Human looks up to the superhuman peaks, a borrower of supernature's gold. He paves his road to immortality. The high gods look on men and watch and choose today's impossibles for the future's base. His transience trembles with the eternal's touch, his barriers seed beneath the infinite's tread. The immortals have their entries in his life. The ambassadors of the unseen draw near. A splendor sullied by the mortal air, Love passes through his heart a wandering guest. Beauty surrounds him for a magic hour. He has vistas of a large revealing joy. Brief widenesses release him from himself, enticing towards a glory ever in front. Hopes of a deathless sweetness lure and leave. His mind is crossed by strange discovering fires. Rare intimations lift his stumbling speech to a moment's kinship with the eternal word. A mask of wisdom circles through his brain, perturbing him with glimpses half divine. He lays his hands sometimes on the unknown. He communes sometimes with eternity. A strange and grandiose symbol was his birth, and immortality and spirit room, and pure perfection and shadowless bliss are this afflicted creature's mighty fate. In him the earth mother sees draw near the change, foreshadowed in her dumb and fiery depths, a godhead drawn from her transmuted limbs, an alchemy of heaven on nature's base. Adept of the self-born unfailing line, leave not the light to die the ages bore. Help still humanity's blind and suffering life. Obey thy spirit's wide, omnipotent urge, a witness to God's parley with the night. It leaned compassionate from the immortal calm, and housed desire, the troubled seed of things. Assent to thy high self, create, endure. Cease not from knowledge, let thy toil be vast. No more can earthly limits pen thy force. Equal thy work with long unending times, traveler upon the bare eternal heights. Tread still the difficult and dateless path, joining the cycles with its austere curve, measured for man by the initiate gods. My light shall be in thee, my strength thy force. Let not the impatient Titan drive thy heart. Ask not the imperfect fruit, the partial prize. Only one boon to greaten thy spirit demand. Only one joy to raise thy kind desire. Above blind fate and the antagonist powers, moveless there stands a high, unchanging will. To its omnipotence leave thy work's result. All things shall change in God's transfiguring hour. August and sweet sank hushed that mighty voice. Nothing now moved in the vast brooding space. A stillness came upon the listening world, a mute immensity of the Eternal's peace. But Aswapati's heart replied to her, a cry amid the silence of the vasts. How shall I rest content with mortal days, and the dull measure of terrestrial things, I who have seen behind the cosmic mask the glory and the beauty of thy face? Hard is the doom to which thou blindest thy sons. How long shall our spirits battle with the night, and bear defeat and the brute yoke of death, we who are vessels of a deathless force, and builders of the Godhead of the race? Or if it is thy work I do below, amid the error and waste of human life, in the vague light of man's half-conscious mind, why breaks not in some distant gleam of thee? Ever the centuries and millenniums pass. Where in the grayness is thy coming's ray? Where is the thunder of thy victor's wings? Only we hear the feet of passing gods. A plan in the occult eternal mind, mapped out to backward and prophetic sight, the aeons ever repeat their changeless round, the cycles all rebuild and ever aspire. All we have done is ever still to do. all breaks and all renews and is the same. Huge revolutions of life's fruitless gyre, the newborn ages perish like the old, as if the sad enigma kept its right till all is done for which this scene was made. Too little the strength that now with us is born, too faint the light that steals through nature's lids, too scant the joy with which she buys our pain. In a brute world that knows not its own sense, thought-racked upon the wheel of birth we live, the instruments of an impulse not our own, moved to achieve with our heart's blood for price, half knowledge, half creations that soon tire. A foiled immortal soul in perishing limbs, baffled and beaten back we labor still. Annulled, frustrated, spent, we still survive. In anguish we labor that from us may rise a larger seeing man with nobler heart, a golden vessel of the incarnate truth, the executor of the divine attempt, equipped to wear the earthly body of God, communicant and prophet and lover and king. I know that thy creation cannot fail, for ever through the mists of mortal thought, infallible are thy mysterious steps. And though necessity dons the garb of chance, hidden in the blind shifts of fate she keeps the slow calm logic of infinity's pace, and the inviolate sequence of its will. All life is fixed in an ascending scale, and adamantine is the evolving law. In the beginning is prepared the close, this strange irrational product of the mire, this compromise between the beast and God, is not the crown of thy miraculous world. I know that there shall inform the inconscient selves, at one with nature and at height with heaven, a spirit vast as the containing sky, and swept with ecstasy from invisible founts, a God come down and greater by the fall. A power arose out of my slumber's cell, abandoning the tardy limp of the hours, and the inconstant blink of mortal sight. There where the thinker sleeps in too much light, and intolerant flames the lone, all-witnessing eye, hearing the word of fate from silence's heart, in the endless moment of eternity, it saw from timelessness the works of time. Overpassed were the leaden formulas of the mind, overpowered the obstacles of mortal space. The unfolding image showed the things to come. A giant dance of Shiva tore the past. There was a thunder as of worlds that fall. Earth was overrun with fire and the roar of death, clamoring to slay a world his hunger had made. There was a clangor of destruction's wings. The Titan's battle cry was in my ears. Alarm and rumor shook the armored night. I saw the omnipotent's flaming pioneers, over the heavenly verge which turns towards life, come crowding down the amber stairs of birth, forerunners of a divine multitude. Out of the paths of the morning star they came, into the little room of mortal life. I saw them cross the twilight of an age, the sun-eyed children of a marvelous dawn, the great creators with wide brows of calm, the massive barrier breakers of the world, and wrestlers with destiny in her lists of will, the laborers in the quarries of the gods, the messengers of the incommunicable, the architects of immortality. Into the fallen human sphere they came, faces that wore the immortal's glory still, voices that communed still with the thoughts of God. bodies made beautiful by the Spirit's light, carrying the magic word, the mystic fire, carrying the Dionysian cup of joy, approaching eyes of a diviner man, lips chanting an unknown anthem of the soul, feet echoing in the corridors of time. High priests of wisdom, sweetness, might, and bliss, discoverers of beauty's sunlit ways, and swimmers of love's laughing fiery floods, and dancers within rapture's golden doors, their tread one day shall change the suffering earth, and justify the light on nature's face. Although fate lingers in the high beyond, and the work seems vain on which our heart's force was spent, all shall be done for which our pain was born. Even as of old man came behind the beast, this high divine successor surely shall come, behind man's inefficient mortal pace, behind his vain labor, sweat and blood and tears. He shall know what mortal mind barely durst think. He shall do what the heart of the mortal could not dare. Inheritor of the toil of human time, he shall take on him the burden of the gods. All heavenly light shall visit the earth's thoughts. The might of heaven shall fortify earthly hearts. Earth's deeds shall touch the superhuman's heights. Earth's seeing widen into the infinite. Heavy, unchanged, weighs still the imperfect world. The splendid youth of time has passed and failed. Heavy and long are the years our labor counts, and still the seals are firm upon man's soul, and weary is the ancient mother's heart. O truth defended in thy secret Son, voice of her mighty musings in shut heavens, on things withdrawn within her luminous depths. O wisdom splendor, mother of the universe, creatrix, the eternal's artist bride, linger not long with thy transmuting hand, press vainly on one golden bar of time, as if time dare not open its heart to God. O radiant fountain of the world's delight, world free and unattainable above, O bliss who ever dwellest deep hid within, while men seek thee outside and never find, mystery and muse with hieratic tongue, incarnate the white passion of thy force, mission to earth some living form of thee. One moment fill with thy eternity, let thy infinity in one body live. All knowledge wrap one mind in seas of light, all love throb single in one human heart. Immortal, treading the earth with mortal feet, all heaven's beauty crowd in earthly limbs. Omnipotence, girdle with the power of God, movements and moments of a mortal will, pack with the eternal might one human hour, and with one gesture change all future time. Let a great word be spoken from the heights, and one great act unlock the doors of fate. His prayer sank down in the resisting night, oppressed by the thousand forces that deny, as if too weak to climb to the supreme. But there arose a wide, consenting voice. The spirit of beauty was revealed in sound. Light floated round the marvelous vision's brow, and on her lips the immortal's joy took shape. O strong forerunner, I have heard thy cry. One shall descend and break the iron law, change nature's doom by the lone spirit's power. A limitless mind that can contain the world, a sweet and violent heart of ardent calms, moved by the passions of the gods, shall come. All mights and greatnesses shall join in her. Beauty shall walk celestial on the earth. Delight shall sleep in the cloudnet of her hair, and in her body as on his homing tree, immortal love shall beat his glorious wings. A music of griefless things shall weave her charm. The harps of the perfect shall attune her voice. The streams of heaven shall murmur in her laugh. Her lips shall be the honeycombs of God, her limbs his golden jars of ecstasy. Her breasts the rapture flowers of paradise. She shall bear wisdom in her voiceless bosom. Strength shall be with her like a conqueror's sword, and from her eyes the eternal's bliss shall gaze. A seed shall be sown in death's tremendous hour, a branch of heaven transplant to human soil. Nature shall overleap her mortal step. Fate shall be changed by an unchanging will. As a flame disappears in endless light, immortally extinguished in its source, vanished the splendor and was stilled the word. An echo of delight that once was close, the harmony journeyed towards some distant hush, a music failing in the ear of trance, a cadence called by distant cadences, a voice that trembled into strains withdrawn. Her form retreated from the longing earth, forsaking nearness to the abandoned sense, ascending to her unattainable home. Lone, brilliant, vacant lay the inner fields. All was unfilled, inordinate spirit space, indifferent, waste, a desert of bright peace. Then a line moved on the far edge of calm. The warm-lipped, sentient, soft terrestrial wave, a quick and many-murmured moan and laugh, came gliding in upon white feet of sound. Unlocked was the deep glory of silence's heart. The absolute unmoving stillnesses surrendered to the breath of mortal air, dissolving boundlessly the heavens of trance, collapsed to waking mind. Eternity cast down its incommunicable lids over its solitudes remote from ken, behind the voiceless mystery of sleep. The grandiose respite failed, the wide release. Across the light of fast receding plains that fled from him as from a falling star, compelled to fill its human house in time, his soul drew back into the speed and noise of the vast business of created things. A chariot of the marvels of the heavens, broad-based to bear the gods on fiery wheels, flaming he swept through the spiritual gates. The mortal stir received him in its midst. Once more he moved amid material scenes, lifted by intimations from the heights, and in the pauses of the building brain, touched by the thoughts that skim the fathomless surge of nature and wing back to hidden shores. The eternal seeker in the aeonic field, besieged by the intolerant press of hours, again was strong for great swift-footed deeds. Awake beneath the ignorant vault of night, he saw the unnumbered people of the stars, and heard the questioning of the unsatisfied flood, and toiled with the form-maker measuring mind. A wanderer from the occult invisible suns, accomplishing the fate of transient things, a god in the figure of the arisen beast, he raised his brow of conquest to the heavens, establishing the empire of the soul on matter and its bounded universe as on a solid rock in infinite seas. The Lord of Life resumed his mighty rounds in the scant field of the ambiguous globe. That is the end of video 13 of the poem Savitri by Sri Aurobindo. That was the end of Book 3, F Canto 4, and the end of Part 1.